What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karn, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we've got a pretty packed show tonight because a lot of stuff has happened since we last had a podcast. We're going to hit on, the biggest news of this podcast is the EA Sports college football is back. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Eric Gilbert transferring to Florida, Gunnar Stockton committing to Georgia. And then speaking of commits, today is National Signing Day. So we're going to talk all about National Signing Day from every Power 5 conference. Group of 5 recruited outside the top 40. So we're not going to talk a lot about them, but Cincinnati, the top class there. Daniel, how are you doing, man? You have a good signing day?
Oh, I'm having a great signing day. Hey, really quick, I want to remind all of our guests, if you will, all of our audience, if you guys would, we really would like you to join us on YouTube. We're just now doing this. It's just the next step in the platform process. We've had the podcast going for a while. Would love for you to join us on YouTube. You can see my office. You can see Jacob's office. We really enjoy what we do, and we'd love for you to put a face to a name. So if you could go to our YouTube page, the best way to do that right now is going through either our link tree and our link bio for both of our Facebook and Instagram pages, which that's at the Extra Point Pod. Also, you could go to the show description where it'll be a link straight to it. If you get there, thank you for getting there. While you're there, take off your jacket, hang out a while, maybe hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell so you're notified when a video posts. This is definitely going to help us out long term. Another way you can help us out, we'd love to have a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Not only does this help us with, our rating and all of that, but it helps us connect with you, because if you leave us a 5-star rating, we're going to be taking these in as mail questions and different, topics and comments, different things like that. We'd love to, get to know you better and, tailor our show to you. That's what it's all about. So definitely want that interaction to be part of it. So if you could just drop us a line there, and we'd be happy to check it out.
Yeah, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can go see our last episode, which included, Josh Pate wearing a shirt that fit and wasn't the color white. So
he had some nice gear. I was surprised, and he wasn't in his living room like last time. He was actually in the office. So, we definitely going to keep those other ones for our own viewing, but this one, that one's at least out for everybody to see. So go check it out. Also, there might be times where we reference something, so it's always nice to see it on YouTube. I like watching them on YouTube. All my favorite podcasts, once they got to YouTube, I started watching, so it just makes sense. This is the next logical step.
That's right. Well, let's dive in. We got a packed episode tonight, Daniel. So, first and foremost, the most important news that came out this week.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
EA Sports college football is back for the first time since July 9th, 2013. We're back.
Yeah, and oh my gosh. And you said ESPN. ESPN broke the news on Twitter. That was the first place I saw it. And then obviously we all rushed to the EA accounts to see if it was true. And this is something that's long been rumored to kind of be tailor-made, to be kind of tied in with that national, or the name, image, likeness movement that's going on. That's what ultimately stopped everything from going, was the Ed O'Bannon case. So every good college football fan, I feel like, has also been an EA Sports, college football, used to be called NCAA football. I think they're going to drop the name because no one has faith in the NCAA anymore. So they're going to just go with EA Sports college football. Love the name. I'm here for it. We're always talking about traditions and pageantry of college football. One of the best ways to tie that in is the college football video game. Jacob, both you and I, our birthdays are in July. That game would always come out in July. I don't know if you did this, but I always just had that as my number one priority, because I don't really worry about my birthday. But I was like, hey, if I've got to have a birthday, why not have the new college football game
Got to.
for me. Yeah. So that was always tied in. It would be my early birthday gift because a week before or so. But I'm pumped.
I'm really excited. I'm excited to, everyone does this. I feel like you find that group of 5 or FCS school and you go win a national champion. You take your UMass and you go win the Natty, right? And, Big Cat of Barstool Sports, he made it really popular in the past year with Coach Doug's and what he
Yeah.
did. I mean, at one point he had over 160,000 people watching live on Twitch him play a video game. So
It's insane.
I think EA Sports just read the tea leaves. People wanted this game back, and we got it back. So super excited for that. But we got a lot more to talk about because today was the traditional National Signing Day, right? But of the top 247 players, only 40 had not signed their letter of intent until today. And so, the early signing day has become more of what we expected from signing day in years past. But today was National Signing Day nonetheless. So as it stands right now, a lot of this will not change. There might be a few minor changes, but top 10 classes today. Alabama, number 1, and we'll talk more about that number 1 class in just a second. Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, LSU at 4, Clemson rounding out the top 5. Then you've got Oregon at 6, Texas A&M at 7, USC at 8, Notre Dame at 9, and Michigan rounding at the top 10. Oklahoma right there on the outside at number 11. But, some familiar faces in the top 10. Not a lot of surprises, especially in that top 5. That top 5 looks like it has the last 3 years, right? No surprises there.
Oh yeah, these are the blue bloods. These are the ones that are consistently getting ranked in the top 5 in the regular rankings. So it obviously is a direct correlation to recruiting. Let's start at the top. I mean, Alabama, uh, you know, for a while there, they got first, the number 1 overall class every year. And then, Georgia snuck in there with a blow, and then, Alabama claimed it back. And, there's kind of been some tug of war back and forth and people trying to knock Alabama off that top. But my goodness, I think that they've just, on paper, you know how it is. This is probably, I think this has been official as of today once Terrion Arnold signed, or I think actually once Kamar Wheaton signed, and then Terrion Arnold was icing on the cake. They have 16 of the top 100 players. Wow. That's also this makes it officially the highest rated class ever. So, I mean, there's too many players to talk about in this class, so I'm not going to go through, ad nauseum. Just going to hit a few highlights because, Jacob, you and I are always going to talk about returning production, things like this. What team lost what? Alabama has shown year in and year out they can reload. Well, they just lost 2 all-world receivers in back-to-back years, and they don't necessarily have, they've got John Mechie on campus, but Ja'Cory Brooks from IMG Academy, 6'3", 185, 5-star wide receiver, number 2 receiver in the nation. Oh, and then they decided to throw in another one in Ajee Hall, a 4-star, very highly rated 4-star, close to being a 5-star, number 5 at the position. Two receivers from Florida that I just think are going to come in and day one be a big part of this offense. Oh yeah, by the way, they got the number 1 and number 2 offensive tackles in the nation. They got the number 1 cornerback in the nation. They just, the number 2 guard, Terrence Ferguson. He's a stud. And a lot of these guys are already on campus. You add to it, some amazing pass rushers like Dallas Turner, 5-star, number 1 outside linebacker, D end, edge rusher, whatever you want to call him. Damon Payne, 5-star D tackle. These guys are just, it's just an embarrassment of riches. And to top it off today with securing Kamar Wheaton, which we expected that signature to come through, that running back, 5-star running back. But Terrion Arnold, he's fantastic as a safety. He's really, he's got a lot of he's got a lot of versatility. There's some corner to him. There's some star, some nickel, some safety. He does it all. The fact that he turned down Georgia, which looked like it was probably number 2, he turned down Georgia, where he probably could have gotten early playing time because of what they're returning and what they're losing in the secondary. I mean, it's pretty amazing that he would go there. I think that obviously Alabama's reputation for developing defensive backs, their basketball team may have won it for him because he is one of these two-sport athletes, and he has specifically talked about playing basketball at the next level. And I think Alabama, first of all, they're having a great season on the hardwood, but I think that this may have actually been kind of the deciding factor for him, the thought that he could actually play for the basketball team. So I think that relationship with the basketball coach, I think that's what's going to take them to the next level. But my goodness, this class, I mean, I feel embarrassed that I can't sit and talk about any, you know, I could talk about 1 or 2 guys, but then I'd be leaving out the other 20, 25 that are more highly rated than, half the schools out there, what they can bring in. So this is impressive to say the least.
A very large class of 27 players, 7 5-stars, average player rating of 95. That's the highest of all time.
Amazing.
The class rating of 327, highest rated of all time, historic. And the scary thing is for the rest of the country is that Nick Saban's getting better at recruiting. And you're talking about the guy who has signed 9 of the last 11 classes ranked number 1 in the country. The one of those 2 years, he didn't get number 1, they were number 2. And the other year, they were number 5. So, I mean, you're talking 9 of the last 11 years, Alabama's been number 1. But this one was the best ever. Like, the 2017 class gets talked about a lot, as they should, because they won 2 national championships. It's the class that had Tua, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, all those guys in there. They won 2 national championships. This class has the ability to do that, if not more. So, not good news if you're tired of Alabama or hoping Nick Saban's on his way out, or, maybe he's going to retire. No, Nick Saban has gotten better. He's adapted. Look at his teams. Look at this recruiting class. It's pretty unbelievable. Let's stay in the SEC, because the teams where Alabama, the only 2 years Alabama has not gotten the number 1 class, it was Georgia. Georgia, since Kirby Smart's gotten there, has recruited on a different level. Right now, they're sitting at number 3. There's a chance they could slip to number 4, but that average player rating still super high at 93.5. Talk to me about Georgia, Daniel. I mean, we got a number 3 class, and they got a couple, some good news this week from the 2022 class as well.
Yeah, so with Georgia, I mean, it's more of the same. They've got a couple of, top linebackers with Smile Munden and Xavier Story, both 5-stars. One's inside, one's outside, but they're both actually pretty versatile. Obviously, Brock Vandegrift, he's going to be the story. Georgia, until halfway through the year, actually towards the end of the year, it seemed like they didn't have a quarterback, or they didn't know how to recruit one. So it was kind of frustrating for Georgia fans to have to sit on the sidelines and almost watch your fully developed team outside of quarterback not be able to compete with the likes of Florida and Alabama, specifically because of that. So Brock Vandegrift coming in 5-star, what that does is obviously he's going to most likely back up JT Daniels next year, but he'll be in he's already enrolled. 16 of their 20 commits are already enrolled. So, Georgia was really only in on one guy for today, which was Terrion Arnold. They went head to head with Alabama. Alabama ended up coming away with him. So Georgia looks like their last 2 or 3 scholarships that they have available are probably going to go to the portal, which is truly amazing. The fact that they didn't sign the amount, they only signed 20. Bama signed 27. Ohio State, who's one spot ahead of Georgia, signed 21, and LSU, the spot behind them, signed 22. So you're seeing some of these schools sign less. That's a product of, COVID, and they're keeping players, roster sizes, things like that. It doesn't count against you in the fall next year, but in the spring it does. There's obviously the transfer portal. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but Yeah, Georgia, this is still a great class. It's tough when the team you're trying to catch just had the greatest class of all time, but there's still some greatness here. 5-star offensive tackle Amarius Mims. He's like 6'8". I mean, these guys are they're very, very impressive. And Georgia's gonna still be there. They're just restocking the cupboard. They've got another, a great returning production. So definitely something that I'm interested in seeing. But like you were mentioning, a lot of their good news came for next year's class. They got 2 commits here recently. Gunnar Stockton, 5-star quarterback, as well as 5-star by some measures, 4-star on the composite, Bear Alexander. All I see when I see this young man is the next Jordan Davis, which for Jordan Davis to come back one more year for Georgia and then maybe link up and meet up with this kid, because this kid's a 2022. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You don't make them like this. So 6'3", 325 pounds, and he's still got one more year of high school ball. So that's pretty impressive. He made his announcement today around noon. So big day for Georgia still, but for 2022.
And then Will Muschamp, that was made official today, is an off-field analyst role. Former Georgia football player Will Muschamp. I can't emphasize enough the importance to stack good quarterbacks, which Georgia did by signing 5-star Brock Vandegrift in this year's class. And then this week, Gunnar Stockton, like you mentioned, announced 2022 number 1 dual threat quarterback. So, and Brock Vandegrift, I know that he ended up behind Caleb Williams in the rankings, but I mean, so this is something Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 Sports mentioned today on their broadcast. But Brock Vandegrift was QB1 on most recruiting boards, including Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley wanted Brock first. The fact that Georgia got him, hometown kid, is huge for quarterback depth this year. And then to follow it up with getting a kid next year, we've all seen that you need multiple quarterbacks. You never know when a kid's going to go down. And we've seen what happens to Georgia whenever you don't have elite quarterback play. And so adding the depth is huge, really important for Georgia. Well, let's talk about Florida. We talked about Georgia. Let's talk about Florida. So the biggest news for Florida this week didn't really come because of their recruiting class. But Daniel, what was the big news Florida got this week?
Arik Gilbert. I mean, my goodness, the transfer tight end who Florida wasn't even on his radar when he was getting it recruited initially, which kind of gave this one a little bit of a surprise. He was down to LSU, Alabama, and Georgia when he initially committed. And then, it was thought to be that he was going to be down to Georgia and Alabama. And then just the year that Kyle Pitts had, I think really weighed heavily on him. And he ends up at Florida. And, that's something that Florida, for the deficiencies that Mullen seems to have as a recruiter, like a high school, recruiter, he really goes after these transfers to really supplement and really help the roster overall and roster management. It's something that I'm not sure is sustainable, but also we have never been in, like, we're just getting started with this transfer portal. So I try my best not to, poo-poo it. I guess I don't know where it's going to end up. I do think that this might catch up to him. One thing I like to compare it to, so college and NFL, they're beautiful because they're different, but in some ways they're the same or they mirror each other. Off season usually is not that similar because in college you can sign 25 first round picks if you're good enough at signing them. So, and in the NFL, it's a lot more parity, obviously, how the draft is set up, how free agency is set up, how the cap is set up. You can only do so much. So I do equate this similar, though. I think that recruiting is the lifeblood of a program, just like the draft is for an NFL team. If you're good at the draft, you're going to be a good you're going to be a good organization because you're going to spend less on your labor. You're going to spend less on your players because you're going to get a lot of guys on their rookie contracts, and then you're not going to be chasing them down in free agency. If you sign someone in free agency, you're typically overpaying because you're paying above market to get them to your organization. I think that's similar in the sense that that puts you in cap trouble. All right. So if you stay with me there, you're going to be in cap trouble if you sign a bunch of free agents more than they're worth, and it's disproportionate to what you have on your roster. All right. At the same token, in college, if you take a lot of these transfers, you only have right now, at least until this gets corrected, right now you can only take in 25 new players on scholarship. So every time you take one of these transfers, it counts against your next year's intake. So the more you do this, it's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now you can keep doing it, and it's going to be a vicious cycle. And at one year, it might catch up to you. Throw in the monkey wrench of COVID. I don't know how this is going to go, but I mean, Florida has been great at taking former 5-stars from other programs. Just last year, Justin Shorter, wide receiver, coming over from Penn State. Brenton Cox, outside linebacker, 5-star, coming over from Georgia. Miami, Lorenzo Lingard, the running back from Miami, he came over. And then you had this year, obviously, Arik Gilbert coming over from LSU, former 5-star. I mean, he's just a huge, huge get. Then you're bringing over DeMarcus Bowman from Clemson, as well as Daquan Newkirk from Auburn. He's a defensive tackle, so he's a 4-star. So they've got all this talent coming in from other big schools. Arik Gilbert and DeMarcus Bowman, a little bit different for them. They're both coming over as sophomores, so they're going to be starting their sophomore season. That's kind of the new flavor of the month with transfers and everything like this, the portal. I think that this is okay as far as roster building. You're not hurting yourself numbers wise. You're not hurting yourself class wise because you're not bringing in a guy who's one and done. That's the best part of high school recruiting. You're getting a guy you think for at least 3 years. So that's one way to look at it. A lot of these transfers, usually they come in for 1 year and then they're going pro or something like that. They're coming in as a grad, transfer. So they only got 1 season. In this case, you're at least getting Arik Gilbert, you think, for 2 years. You're at least getting DeMarcus Bowman, we think, for 2 years. So that's something to keep an eye on. Kind of the class recruiting. Which class are you recruiting from? Daquan Newkirk, he's a senior that they're bringing over. So he really is a one and done. You're bringing him over for 1 year, stopgap measure as a defensive tackle, see what you can get, and then he's graduated or going to the NFL or whatever he does.
I promise we're going to stop talking about the SEC in just a second, but reality is I'm going to talk about Texas A&M, and they ranked 7th in the country, but they ranked 4th in the SEC in recruiting. So SEC just, if you look at the top 25, the SEC just recruits differently. A lot of that it's because geography, right? But Texas A&M, they finish off with the number 7 class in the country, number 4 in the SEC, like I mentioned, but Jimbo Fisher has set up Texas A&M for sustained success because of the way he has stacked these classes on top of each other. So his first year in 2018, they ranked 17th in the country and 6th in the SEC. 2019, they ranked 4th in the country, 3rd in the SEC. Last year, they ranked 6th in the country, 4th in the SEC. This year, 7th in the country, 4th in the SEC. So staying consistent, that's 3 top 7 classes in a row, which is what you've got to do to stay competitive in the West, right? They're putting themselves in position, especially with, the down year LSU had after their championship year. Auburn is going through, a new staff. Ole Miss just got a new staff last year. Mississippi State just got a new staff last year. Arkansas just got a new staff last year. Like, this is your chance to set yourself up to be, let's be real, the number 2 team in the West, and hopefully you can sneak one from Bama at some point. Because the reality is you're not going to consistently beat Alabama recruiting top 7. That's going to take several number 1 classes to consistently beat Alabama. But they've done a much better job in the state of Texas recruiting than Texas has, especially this year. This year, of the top 25 players in the state of Texas, Texas A&M signed 7, while Texas only signed 2. And the biggest school they're fighting in state is Alabama. So, you can say they haven't really locked it down the border necessarily, but they're out recruiting every other school in state, which is huge. Texas is going to have a lot of players. You're not going to sign 20 of the top 25 in Texas. It's not going to happen. So to sign 7, which is more than anybody else, is huge. I think Texas A&M is doing an excellent job recruiting right now. All right, let's go to the Big Ten. We're done with the SEC. Let's go to the Big Ten. Daniel, Ohio State has the number 2 class. You seem to be really impressed with it when we were talking earlier. Talk to me more about that number 2 class.
Yeah, this one, I mean, if it wasn't for Alabama, we'd be gushing over Ohio State, which we still should gush because these guys, I mean, they signed 5 stars themselves. I mean,
And that could be 6 with JT.
Oh yeah,
What's his name? I don't JTT.
yeah, JTT. Not to be confused with JT Daniels. He's not the same guy. So Jack Sawyer, this guy, I mean, defensive end, 5-star. He's from the state of Ohio. There's something in the water up there. They just keep getting these D ends, and he's going to be the next Bosa brother. I don't know. I mean, he's just a dude who, I mean, 6'5", 250. This guy's a beast. So plug and play there. Emeka Buka, I mean, 5-star, number 1 wide receiver in the nation. I mean, I don't really know what we can say about their wide receiver room at this point because they've got Garrett Wilson, they've got Chris Olave, and at this point we're almost looking at them like you're in the way because they've got all the 5 stars that they signed last year at receiver, and then you add in him. I mean, this is going to be fun to watch. It's one of these things where we started to. I wanted to downplay Ohio State because of them losing Justin Fields, them losing Trey Sermon, them losing a couple of guys. But honestly, with what they kept specifically, and then these guys to help reload, I mean, it's going to be impressive. Donovan Jackson coming in, 5-star guard. I mean, you can never have enough of those. Travion Henderson. This is the best running back in the class. He's probably the best running back from the past 3 or 4 classes. I mean, he's that good. He's electric, 5-star, number 1 running back in the nation, 5'11", 195 pounds. But, we've referenced it a couple of times. If he was able to, play this past year, he probably would have started over Sermon. That's not an exaggeration. His junior film, if you haven't watched it, is unbelievable. He didn't get to play his senior year. This guy is a dude on a mission. But you add to it Evan Pryor, another running back. He's a 4-star, but a highly rated 4-star. I mean, this guy came in and he's not scared of competition. He's not scared. You're going to have 2 backs that are premier. They're going to come in behind CJ Stroud, behind this great offensive line and these great receivers. I'm impressed. That's easy to see. Oh yeah. Throw in another 5-star quarterback to, from Philadelphia, Kyle McCord. Hey, battle it out. Let's let the best man win. Jordan Hancock from Georgia, 4-star corner. I mean, this class is as talented as it is deep. So they didn't waste any, spots here. All these guys are going to be ballers. And I mean, a lot of these are household names that we weren't really, we weren't really expecting Ohio State to just they're on that Alabama level where they're just stacking these classes one on top of the other. I mean, Ohio State might be my favorite to win the national championship next year, and they're replacing a quarterback. So that's how much I think of this class.
I'm kind of with you. I'm buying Ohio State stock, which we talked about with our way too early top 25. But we talked to Georgia, then we talked Florida, we talked to Ohio State. Let's talk Michigan. Michigan was a team that I was impressed with. They had 2 big flips today. So they flipped 2 defensive tackles. They were in state, so they flipped them back to stay home. Both Rayshon Benny, a 4-star defensive tackle, and then I'm gonna get this name right. I wrote it out phonetically.
You got it. I believe
you.
Right? Do it.
I believe. You ready? All right. Ike Kukwu, Iwuna. Yeah.
That's
so
it.
It's a Nigerian name. So
I
wrote that out phonetically so that I could get it right. But 2 in-state defensive tackles. You can never have too much talent on the defensive line or the offensive line, right? So huge for Michigan. If you look at how they've recruited over the years since Harbaugh got there, they got up really quickly and they went down a little bit. And so they're on the path up again. So in 2015, his first year, they ranked 37th nationally, and then 2016 went up to 8. 2017 went up to 5, and that was second in the Big Ten. 2018, you saw a dip, ranked 22nd in 2018, third in the Big Ten. 2019, back up, 8th in the country, first in the Big Ten. And then last year, ranked 14th, second in the Big Ten. This year, top 10 class, ranked 10th, ranked second in the Big Ten. So bounce back year for Michigan on the recruiting trail, which is huge for Jim Harbaugh. And now, in the last 3 years, you've recruited top 2 in the Big Ten, including that freshman class that'll be juniors this year. That class was the best class in the Big Ten that year. So now you've got to put that on the field. You've shown that in the recruiting trail that you're the second best team recruiting in the Big Ten. You got to show that in the field now. We'll see if that happens in the fall with the new offensive system. And you've got a 5-star quarterback coming in from IMG Academy, JJ McCarthy. So they've got their quarterback of the future. We got to start seeing that result in the field for Michigan. But nonetheless, winners on signing day for sure. Let's go out west. Let's go to the Pac-12 in classic fashion, following what we did this year, where your team was Oregon, my team was USC. Let's talk about our teams, our Pac-12 teams. So let's talk Oregon first. They were the higher ranked class, but both in the top 10. Talk me through Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon, I mean, much of the same, getting some big time players. Kingsley Suamatia.
That was great.
I shot in the dark. He's an offensive tackle. He's their highest rated recruit, though. I mean, he's a 4-star. They've got several 4-stars in this class. He is out of Utah. He's powerful. I think that he can be one of these. I mean, you see Penei Sewell come out this past year. You've got, some structure there. Cristobal is known for the offensive line. I think that that's definitely going to be a push going forward. They want to keep those lines of scrimmage. That's how they're going to be the difference in the Pac-12. So they got to keep building that up. Quarterback wasn't super impressive this year. I know we only had a few game sample. They won the Pac-12, so why am I complaining? But Ty Thompson coming in, 4-star. He's the number 4 rated quarterback. So a highly rated 4-star out of Arizona. Definitely someone to keep an eye on, because I definitely don't think that quarterback position is locked down going into next year. I think this is a wide open competition. A couple of big time receivers coming in, Troy Franklin and Dante Thornton, a couple of 4-stars, 2 of the top 10 at their position. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, hey, how about another offensive tackle? We got Bram Walden, also out of Arizona, out of Seguro High School in Scottsdale, which is now a hotbed for D1 prospects. So definitely impressed with the haul that they have. I think that Oregon has been great at developing guys. And I think if we have a normal year, normal offseason, I expect a lot from the Ducks, especially with this class.
Let's talk the Trojans. So USC ranked 8th nationally, and same thing. I want to go through the pattern of Clay Helton. So Clay Helton's first class, believe it or not, ranked 2nd in the country back in 2015. Then he slipped to 10th in the country, 2017 and 18, ranked 4th in the country. In all 4 of those years, best class in the Pac-12. Then it slipped for a couple of years. So 2019 was ranked 20th and 4th in the Pac-12. Last year, 64th in the country and 12th in the Pac-12. And I thought that might have been beginning of the end for Clay Helton. But, hey, credit to him and his staff. Bounce back, top 10 class, 2nd in the Pac-12, right behind Oregon. And you keep Corey Foreman home, number 1 player in the country, 5-star. Huge to keep him home. You've also got 2 quarterbacks coming in. So this will be Keaton Slovis's last year, most likely. I expect him to go in the draft after this year. But you bring in 2 4-star quarterbacks, one from in-state, one from Utah, and Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is ranked the 7th best quarterback in the country, while Miller Moss ranks 8th. So 2 highly rated quarterbacks. And on top of that, they have 4 former 4-stars they got in the transfer portal, including former Texas running back Keontae Ingram. So
That's big.
USC really bounced back this year on the recruiting trail. And they've locked down California. That was the big thing for a while is you have so many players in state that USC wasn't getting. I remember last year, Arizona State got a ton of players out of California. Oregon's getting a ton of players out of California. Well, this year of California's top 25 players, SC signed 9. And that's huge to
That
keep
is
9 of those
big.
guys in state, including the number 1 overall player in Corey Foreman, which again is huge. The next closest school was Oregon and California, and they signed 4. So more than double of anybody else. That's huge. If you're a school like USC, same thing with Georgia, the Florida schools, LSU, Texas A&M. You got to keep that talent in state. You have a wealth of talent in your backyard. You got to keep some of that home in order to be successful. And USC did that this year on the recruiting trail. So good for Clay Helton and his staff. They're going to have to make up some ground for last year's class being so poor, but this is a step in the right direction to do that. Let's talk Big 12. So here's my take on the Big 12 is I'm looking at the Big 12. Their highest ranked class is Oklahoma at number 11. Right now, we'll talk about Oklahoma in a second, but their average player rating was pretty high. So, that's what's really important is your average player rating. But of the top 25 classes, the Big 12's got 2 in the top 25. Only 2, which I thought was surprising, with how we hold the Big 12 is like, especially versus the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 also had 2 classes in the top 25, but both of those were in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking at the top 40 classes, the Big 12 has 4 in the top 40, and they rank 11, 17, 38, and 39. The Pac-12 has 6 in the top 40, and they rank 6, 8, 28, 29, 35, and 38. So pretty insane that the Pac-12 this year has out-recruited the Big 12 in a way, which good for them. But overall, I just was a little bit disappointed in overall the Big 12 showing on signing day.
Yeah, it could be a couple things. Could be, just class size, class management, different things like this. It could be early playing time. I know Iowa State returns a ton, so they probably weren't going to get a top flight class of a bunch of guys who are expecting to play early because whoever they bring in this year is just going to be mostly getting developed behind the other guys. So, yeah, it's one of those tough years, and you could credit it to COVID a little bit for some players maybe staying home and less of those. And I say less of those, Big 12 places being hotbeds for recruiting, but I don't know, like 7 or 8 of those schools are in Texas, and that's a hotbed. But it is what it is. I think that like you mentioned about Southern Cal and holding down the fort in California. A lot of the players, the big time players, were staying home at their school. So the fact that there's such a big pie to split in Texas with all the schools, and then you add in the fact that some other schools are going to try to come in there, like you were talking about Alabama earlier. I mean, it just is what it is. Like the Big 12 kind of suffered from that. We'll see if it comes to fruition though on the field. I think that they do have a lot more coaching, I guess, like schematic advantages. They were kind of ahead of the curve on the offensive side of the ball. So you're just now seeing Big Ten and SEC kind of catch up to those schemes and concepts. So, they might have enough to be fine.
Oklahoma has out-recruited Texas for the first time since 2016, which, it's Sark's first season, new staff, understandable, but big for them considering how well they've outperformed Texas in the field during that stretch where Texas out-recruited them. And the biggest thing for Oklahoma was how they recruited on defense this year, because we've talked about it this past season, the podcast. I'm a huge believer in Alex Grinch. We saw them take that big step forward this year on defense. Now you're bringing in a ton of young talent to supplement the scheme on defense. And we already know what kind of an offensive coach Lincoln Riley is. We already know what the Oklahoma offense is capable of. And Oklahoma will be a media darling preseason for playoff and national title expectations, but they should be like looking at this team, they absolutely should be. And this recruiting class, yes, they're ranked 11th, but again, look at the average player rating, look at how they're recruited on the defensive side of the ball. And it gets me excited to watch Oklahoma this year and see some of these freshmen make an impact immediately on their defense. Let's see. Let's go to the ACC. We'll finish up with the ACC. Let's talk Clemson. So Clemson signs their second highest recruiting class ever in program history. Their best class was last year. But if you're going by average player rating, this is their best class ever. This is a common misconception with Clemson is everyone assumes because Clemson's been to 6 straight playoffs that Clemson is always recruited in this top 3, top 5 like level. And the truth is they haven't. But what they got right was the important part. They got quarterback right early. When they signed Deshaun Watson, when you get quarterback right, everything else falls into place. And they got quarterback right. Clemson was not recruiting at a top 3, top 5 level. Their first top 3 class was last year when they signed the number 3 class in the country. That was their first ever top 3 class. This is their second ever top 5 class last year and this year. So the fact that Clemson has been as successful as they've been without top 5 talent, now they're getting top 5 talent. And if the ACC wants to catch up to Clemson, they had their chance because now they're out recruiting everybody. And so it's scary for the rest of the ACC. Their recruiting footprint has grown. They've built a brand for themselves. When players are like Trevor Lawrence are coming in, when players like Isaiah Simmons are coming in, when you get guys like Brian Garcia, Miles Murphy making immediate impact as freshmen, I mean, you're just showing these recruits that, hey, you can come be successful with your career in the NFL at Clemson, and you're probably going to go to the playoff and at least have a shot at winning a championship along the way. So I'm just really, really, really impressed with Clemson. Daniel, what's another ACC team that impressed you on signing day?
Well, for me, I'd probably go with Miami. And it's some unconventional ways, but also some conventional ways. Like, obviously, Leonard Taylor, a defensive tackle, 5-star coming in, number 1 at his position. He's a top 10 player by the composite. I mean, he's from Miami, so you kept him home. James Williams, safety, also could be a linebacker at the next level, 6'5", 218 pounds, or was recruited as an athlete, but safety is what he's listed as here. He went back and forth, but I don't know what his initial plan is, but he's from Fort Lauderdale, American Heritage. He's a 5-star, number 1 at his position, top 15 player. I mean, you want to say something about him?
Isaiah Simmons. That's my player comp for him. Just like freak, tall, long, wide. If you put him at linebacker, I mean, think about offenses right now. Like, you need linebackers who can cover guys in the slot. Anyway, he's just a freak, and good for Miami for keeping him home.
Yeah, and he's one of these guys who his frame, he's 6'5", and he's not even touching 220, and you could just tell you could put more weight on him. So that's why a lot of that is coming out about a potential move to linebacker, specifically inside linebacker, your sideline to sideline. But Miami has an excellent heritage of amazing safety play. So I think Ed Reed was involved in his recruitment. And so I think that's important. So I think you got to keep an eye on that. Jake Garcia, big time quarterback coming in. You talked about stacking quarterbacks when we were relevant to Georgia. Some of these other schools we've talked about quarterbacks coming in and it being important. I mean, they're bringing back Derek King, and you and I talked about during the year, is this a one and done year where we don't know what they're going to do next year? And then Derek King announces he's coming back. So we kind of make a check mark or make a little note, hey, Miami's going to be still in the conversation next year. And then he gets hurt. So we still expect him to be back, but it's going to be a whole offseason of him training and trying to get better. Jake Garcia coming in, he's going to be an early enrollee. The fact that he's going to be able to practice, if you're going to have spring practice, it looks like you will. Spring practice, spring game, install the offense. If you're at worst going in with him, if Derek King is not ready, then you feel better about your chances next season. A quarterback of his caliber. He famously is, obviously we talked about him, from Southern California, came over to Georgia when California canceled their season. So he's big time. But one of the best players on this team is actually, I think, going to be Tyreek Stevenson, who's transferring from Georgia. He's a former 5-star. He was a safety, safety corner mix. He kind of played both, kind of played that star position. I think he's going to come in and probably be a cornerback to start with. But he's going to come into his junior year. He's coming back home. He's from Miami. Charleston Rambo, wide receiver, transferring in from Oklahoma. I think that's huge. Anytime you can get some receivers in here.
I mean, he had 1,000 yards at Oklahoma last year.
So that's impressive. Romello Brinson from Miami Northwestern. I mean, he's a 4-star receiver coming in. So you're putting a lot of these guys, Jacoby George, another 4-star receiver. These guys are just, I think that this is going to go big for Rhett Lashley's offense. You know, you and I have talked about how, defensive line is so important. Quarterback is so important. Receiver has increasingly become so important. And I think that there were times last year where Miami didn't have the receivers to play with Clemson, to play with some of these other schools. And it kind of, showed itself on the field. Well, they're bringing in some talent that I think that, at a minimum, I think they'll be as good as they were last year, but I think they're improving their squad. And I mean, this is a sign of good things, because you look at your peers, you don't necessarily look at the overall ranking for the, national. They're 12th, but they're the next best team in the ACC, behind Clemson. So they're the next highest rated team. So that's important, and they're on the good side. They're on the coastal. So they can potentially meet Clemson in the ACC championship. And I think this class is going to go a long way in helping that.
A few more teams I wanted to mention to congratulate on. Yeah, you got 4 teams that had their highest ranked class ever for that school. So North Carolina. So I say North Carolina. They ranked 13th last year, 14th this year, but average player rating was significantly higher this year. So highest class by average player ever for North Carolina. Wisconsin. You probably won't believe this, because I didn't when I heard it. Wisconsin has never had a top 25 recruiting class.
Wow. That's amazing.
They're ranked 15th right now. So, wow. Considering, the staple they've been in the Big Ten. Maryland, highest ranked class ever for Maryland at 19.
And that's an area that has been such a hotbed of talent, and
DMV.
It's been going elsewhere, or it's been going to other nearby powerhouses. And then recently last year, oh my gosh, his name is escaping me, but committed to LSU and then flipped on signing day, ended up staying home. 5-star receiver. I can't remember his name. We'll come back to it, but he ends up going to Maryland. I think Maryland kind of has a little, a little momentum there. And if they can get some momentum in that area, I mean, you talk about locking down a border. If they can lock down their border, that area, that's going to be big, big for them and their health as a program.
Pitt ranks 26th in recruiting, their highest ranked class ever. They started the day in the top 25, but you had a couple of SEC schools kick them out with Arkansas, Mississippi State, but right there at 26, and that is their highest ranked class ever. It's a Pitt pod, so got to celebrate the Pitt Panthers.
Like they needed any more help. They got this in the bag.
Daniel, biggest winners from signing day?
I mean, Alabama. I don't know. I mean,
Bama,
yeah,
highest ranked class ever in history.
I don't want to go too far out on a limb, but Alabama. I mean, Ohio State. Really and truthfully, Ohio State. This class is truly remarkable, and so I mean, they're just locking down, just yet another punch their ticket. They're going to be in the playoff again next year. So. Impressed with Ohio State as well.
Another recruiting cycle in the books. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. If you're watching on YouTube, the spelling's right there, so don't mess it up. But that will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob.